I'd like to welcome everyone. I'm State Senator Dean Murray, and I'd like to welcome you to the 3rd Senate District. I'd also like to thank our hosts, the Patchogue Medford Library. This is actually the newest branch of the library, barely 1 year old. So this is one of the first big events, I think, that they've had here. So we'd like to thank our hosts for having us here. It's a very, very important subject that we're talking about. You'll hear a lot about it in the coming year, and that is affordability, probably the one thing on everyone's mind. So we're here, our Senate conference, and I'll turn this over to our Senate Minority Conference leader, Senator Ord, who's down all the way from the Buffalo area. This is how important this is. We have senators from all over the state here. But we'd like to also thank everyone that will be participating and sharing your information, because it's important that we hear from you and hear about the different aspects and what we can do to help with affordability. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our minority leader in the New York State Senate, Senator Rob Ord.
Thank you, Senator Murray. I want to thank all of certainly my colleagues who are here. I certainly want to thank the library, the staff, put this together, but I want to thank all the folks who did come out because, you know, it's a Wednesday. You could have been anywhere else. I'm sure there are other places you could be. But to Senator Murray's point, this issue, and you're going to hear a lot about affordability, probably to the point where some of you will become, you know, annoyed or it'll lose its meaning. And we talk about this, and what we're hoping to get out of this, we've had these roundtables all over the state. This is the last one of this year. It would have been the last one, period, but we had one in Syracuse that got weather. We had to reschedule that. But we've had these in Western New York, the North Country, Central New York, the Capital Region, the City of New York, and now here. And obviously, there's some nuance depending on where in the state you might be. But what does, we use that term, but what does it actually mean, right? Affordability. How do we make people's lives more affordable? And certainly, how do we do things as elected leaders that do not contribute to the unaffordability issue, to increasing costs? That's what I think a lot of times, you know, it's almost like the medical, first do no harm, right? Are we doing things that are actually increasing costs, whatever the intention might be? If it's making your life more costly and more expensive, then it's not helping the key issue, which is the affordability. And as we all know, as proud New Yorkers, but one of the things that we all know about New York is it's an expensive state. It was an expensive state before this sort of focus on affordability, and it's only gotten more expensive. And what does that mean? It means it prices people out of here. It chases people out, whether those are former employees, whether they're family members, whether they're prospective employees, and that, in a lot of ways, also makes things more difficult for the people who stay behind, because you have less tax base, right? So the tax bill goes up, and less people are there to pay it. So it is a compounding effect as we lose people. And we know we're losing people to other states. That's an undeniable fact. So I think we as elected leaders also have to do things to keep people here and attract people here. And if you're the most expensive state, or if you're known as an expensive state, that's not going to help your cause. And I know we're going to hear from people when we talk about affordability, energy, right? That's something we all can relate to, because we all get an energy bill. And we know those bills are going up. And they've been going up. And I'm concerned there's policies that are out there right now that are going to continue to increase those things. And we have to take a different approach, I think, in this state as it relates to energy, to be respectful and supportive of a clean environmental future, but at the same time, being practical about the cost of that, right? And public safety is a great example. I was a former mayor. I would tell people, we all want safe communities, and if I could put a cop in front of everyone's house, I would. But the reason we don't is because it's very expensive, right? So with public safety, mayors and local governments, there's a price that we think, okay, my constituents can pay this amount for public safety, and you give them the best public safety we can at this cost. That's why these decisions can sometimes be difficult. Energy is no different. We need an all-of-the-above approach. You're going to hear from Senator Matera and others, but I think we need to take smart policies to keep energy bills low and hopefully lower energy costs for consumers as we go forward. Housing, huge issue. Everywhere in the state, I'm sure down here, in Western New York, my wife's a realtor, housing prices have been crazy. And what does that mean? Well, it means people like me haven't moved, because why would I move out of my house from 2010 to, I have a lower rate, the prices have skyrocketed. That means that there's some young couple right now that are not able to buy that first home. And I will tell you this, I think the American dream, you ask anybody, what is the American dream? Somewhere in there, home ownership or having your own place very often is part of the American dream. And if people can't achieve that, that's a bad thing. That is a bad thing, and that is indicative of how expensive housing has become. And part of that reason, energy, but also the cost to build homes is more expensive. The cost to build in New York is more expensive comparatively than other places. And unless we tackle that issue, I worry we're not going to quickly solve the housing issue either. Small businesses, I don't know if there's small businesses here, but you all know the cost for you is going up. What does that mean? Maybe you hire less people because you got to put more money into other things. If you hire less people, that's not great. That means those are folks that's fewer jobs. Maybe you got to lay off somebody, God forbid. That's not a good thing. Or maybe you decide, I'm going to pack it up and go to a different state. And then obviously our farmers, childcare costs. I could sort of go on and on, but the point is we want to talk about, this conference wants to drill down on the specific affordability and the specific ways to make life more affordable. And that includes by hearing from people here and having a discussion, because we're not going to get it by just talking about affordability. Just saying the word affordability isn't going to make New York State more affordable. We have to take actual legislative action. That's why these folks are here today. I want to recognize my colleagues real quick, and then I'll shut up and let them talk. I want to introduce Senator Matera, here from Suffolk County. He is our ranker on energy. Senator Gallivan, who's also from my neck of the woods up in Western New York. So you got two for the price of one from Western New York here today. Senator Gallivan, former sheriff in Erie County as well. He's been a long time in the Senate. Senator Steve Rhodes from Nassau County is here today. Senator, good to see you. Senator Canzoneri Fitzpatrick, also from Nassau County. We have Senator Palumbo from out east here in Suffolk County.
Medford graduate, by the way. Red Raiders, baby.
Whatever that gets him. I don't know what that gets him, but that's good, right? I'm sure that gets you a vote somewhere. But Senator Dean Murray, of course, whose district we're in, I want to thank him for hosting this. This is an important topic, obviously. So, Senator, thank you. And, of course, we have Senator Wyke from Suffolk County. She also goes into a little bit of Nassau, so she sort of straddles both counties. And used to have this area, so knows it well. And then we have I'll let Senator Murray introduce the other gentlemen who are here at the table with me as well. But just want to thank all of you. If you weren't here, there'd be no reason for us to do this, like to do a roundtable. So I want to appreciate the feedback we're going to get from actual business owners, actual people who are out in the community, and we want to make this state more affordable for you. And I think the folks who can come up with a blueprint to make life more affordable are the folks who are going to win elections and hopefully then enact those plans to make life more affordable here in New York. So thank you very much for being here, and God bless you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to, we're actually going to let Tony Palumbo and Patricia Canzoneri Fitzpatrick kind of run the show here. I'm just here to look pretty and listen. And maybe failing at the first, but I'll listen and ask questions and everything. But we're going to let these two kind of run the show here. So,
Excellent. Do you want to go?
All right, I will go first. So
We'll save. We have to. I mean, we're in government, right? We need to say a few words. Like that's what we have.
Yes,
we can't help it.
exactly.
No, I'm only kidding. But
as you heard, I'm Senator Patricia Canzoneri Fitzpatrick. I am from Nassau County, right up against the Queens border. And I run from Long Beach all the way up to Jericho Turnpike. Our leader is a former veteran from the Army, so I use a lot of terminology I've learned from him, boots on the ground, and we are the last line of defense up against the city by being where I am. But yes, as the leader said, we need to hear from you about what you're experiencing. I can claim that I'm the mom of 4, so I know what it's like to try to run my household. I know what it's like to have a small business. I've been in a small business with my mom and dad for over 25 years. And I'm a former elected official from a local government, so I know about unfunded mandates, and what we do in Albany puts a lot of pressure on local government. I personally think that the failure of public safety in our state has started a ripple effect that has affected our affordability, right? We had situations where everybody's shoplifting, no cashless bail, no accountability. As I said, running my household with 4 kids that could do whatever the hell they wanted would never amount to any accountability. And we've basically created a situation where criminals do whatever they want without consequence. They walk into Target, they clear off the shelves, and they walk out with it. And because of the safety of the staff that work there, we haven't done anything. And what does that do? That causes Target to have increased insurance, increased prices of goods. And that, to me, has been the start of the ripple down effect that we are now seeing, that everything costs more. Whether I go to my local shop and try to get a salad for lunch, and now it's $20, which sounds outrageous, but that's what it costs now to get lunch out. We're seeing all of those things. And as I said, as a small business owner, I know about payroll taxes, I know about insurance, I know about rent. So I've seen what's gone on. But I thank all of you for taking the time to participate and being here with us, because learning from you and bringing that back to Albany is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to represent you. We're supposed to listen to your needs. And I thank you for being here and taking the time to participate, because we have a lot to learn about what you're experiencing. And I'm grateful that all my colleagues are here, because we will take this information and do something about it. Again, as our leader said, I'm surprised he didn't say it, if we could spend our way to affordability, we would be the most affordable state in the union, and we haven't done that yet. So we need to do better, and I'm proud to be part of a conference that's listening. So thank you again for being here. And I'll turn it over to my colleague,
Great,
Tony
thank you.
Palumbo.
And so we want to hear from you folks, but maybe just a little bit, we'll go around the table real quick just to talk about us, what we do, because I think, as was just mentioned by the leader, by Senator Canzoneri Fitzpatrick, that this permeates every issue, right? Permeates the environment, affordability. It's not just taxes and jobs. Public safety, you name it. Our schools, as Bob's going to talk about a little bit, how this is all affecting, how energy policy is affecting our students, and schools having to cut programs. We're going to get into this more deeply. Me, I'm a lawyer. I'm a former prosecutor in Suffolk County. I grew up in Patchogue. For 25 years, I've been out on the East End. My district goes from Stony Brook University to Montauk. So I have the whole East End. So I've got it really unique. We've got bills here from the Farm Bureau. We've got farms. We've got small businesses. And my wife and I I've had a small law firm for years, so I understand the aspects of making payroll and all those other concerns that we all have to deal with on Long Island. So I bring a little bit different skill set than some of my other colleagues. So maybe we'll go around the table real quick so they can just take a minute or two to just talk about what their life experience was, which I think will kind of give us a flavor as to where we're going to go with today's panels.
What would you like to start?
So I used to own a small business. My name is Alexis Wyke. I represent the 8th Senate District, but I used to represent this area as well, so I'm so glad to see so many of you here. I used to own my own small business, so I understand what that costs. I have 3 children, so again, I know what it costs to run a household. I was the receiver of taxes for Islip Town for 9 years. I've heard this for the last 15 years about affordability on Long Island. Property taxes, school taxes. How are we running our governments? How are we staying in our houses? I have been listening to senior citizens, people with disabilities, veterans, regular homeowners, first-time homeowners. This is something I'm really, really well-versed in for the last 15 years. I've seen the trends and the changes, and now as a state senator, we've got laws and regulations that have been passed and put into place that are making things very unaffordable in our state, and I'm very glad you're here to give us information and feedback.
I'm State Senator Dean Murray, and as I mentioned, this is the 3rd Senate District, so welcome. I am a small business owner. I own a small advertising agency. And we actually also publish the Long Island Fugitive Finder website. So I kind of connect with Nassau and Suffolk County Police, and each month they send me their most wanted criminals, and we put it up on the website. People phone in tips, and we've helped to get about 1,500 fugitives off the streets and back behind bars. So I'm coming from that angle of a small business owner as well as a former state assemblyman, now a state senator, and I'm also the ranking minority member on the Commerce, Small Business, and Economic Development Committee of the Senate. So I'm very interested in hearing what everyone has to say today.
I am New York State Senator Steve Rhodes. I proudly represent the 5th Senate District, which geographically wise is sort of Hicksville, Plainview, Old Bethpage, and eastern Nassau, all the way down to the South Shore as far west as the Meadowbrook Parkway, and then back up to close the loop into East Meadow, Salisbury, a little piece of Westbury. I'm an attorney as well, former Deputy Bureau Chief for tort and civil rights litigation in the Office of the Nassau County Attorney. Went into private practice. I was a Nassau County legislator before being elected to the state Senate in 2022. Was the chair of the Public Safety Committee, served now of particular relevance here as a ranking member on the Senate's Labor Committee, as well as our Internal Governance Committee as well. I think one of the things that we see is how Albany policies continue to impact affordability here on Long Island, particularly when it comes in terms of housing, and the interplay between what goes on in the city of New York specifically and how the effects here on Long Island are necessarily felt. So, for example, when you have hundreds of thousands of units of housing in the city of New York that have been taken offline simply because of policies enacted by the state of New York, because it's more affordable for them to take the loss and write it off of their taxes than it is to actually make those units available to rent, that impacts not only housing in the city of New York and housing costs, that impacts housing prices here on Long Island, because those opportunities, they come to Long Island for often. You look at energy costs, which we're all incredibly concerned about. The CLCPA, and I know Mario is going to speak, Senator Matera is going to speak about that as well. The mandates that have been placed as a result of the CLCPA on utilities are part of the reason that utility costs have gone higher, 30, 40% higher. So those are things that we definitely want to hear about as well, in terms of how this is impacting your lives, your businesses, your interests as well. My wife is a small business owner. She owns a women's casual clothing store. I know way more about women's clothing than you would think. But I see the impact that it has on her. Payroll taxes, having to make payroll, having to deal with inventory, having to deal with inflated costs. How do you keep costs down while the cost of the product that you're actually bringing into your business continues to go up? So these are real problems that everyday New Yorkers, both residents and businesses, are facing, and that's the reason that we're coming around here to listen. We know part of the problem, and Albany has created, under one-party rule, part of the problem. But we want to hear about how this is impacting you directly so we can try and be part of the solution. All done?
Good afternoon, everybody. Pat Gallivan is my name, and I represent the Buffalo Bills, along with Senator Ord, of course. But the district that I represent is Erie County, which is the county that surrounds Buffalo. I do not represent any of the city of Buffalo, but the towns and villages around it. I'm in my 16th year in the Senate, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say before I entered the Senate that I really had no idea how much New York State was involved in your life. My background was in law enforcement. I was a state trooper, and then I was the Erie County Sheriff for 8 years, and I also served as a member of the Board of Parole. My interest in the state, though, came with the starting of a small business. So I'm proud to say that we started a small business and investigation and security company that's still alive 17 years later, but it was the state's fiscal problems in 2008, 2009, when they increased the state budget by 14%. They put taxes and fees upon everything, and put many more regulations in the way of businesses. And I was complaining about it one day, and my wife, who absolutely hates politics but is also a small business owner, said, you should do something about it. And so here I am, and we have tried over the years. The states, we've had some successes over the years, but since we've seen the change in Albany, the culture of Albany, since the majority change back in 2018, we've seen a change, I think, in the wrong direction. We continue to see more obstacles, more spending, more regulations, and too many people in elected office telling you what's good for you. I'm proud to be with this group of people in our conference who actually takes the opposite approach, that we're supposed to be representing people and we're supposed to be representing businesses. And the only way that we can do that is by talking with people, being out in the community, and listening. So I'm proud to be among my colleagues. I'm thrilled to be here. The hospitality for our meetings the last few days was great. And I, too, want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to help share your concerns. And we will continue to try to do our best to mitigate some of those things and make New York State much more affordable than it is. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, and so glad everybody's here today. This is very, very important for our community and, groups to get together. And my name is Mario Matera. I'm Senator Mario Matera. I represent the 2nd Senate District, which is Smithtown, Old Smithtown, and Old Huntington. And I'm just so very, very lucky that I represent an amazing district, and especially we do, all of us here. And thank you for all our colleagues, and especially our leader, Ort, coming down and having the retreat that we could actually sit here with everybody. But, we have dysfunctional government up in New York State. And for somebody that came from the trades, so going from a union leader to becoming a New York State senator was very interesting to me. Sitting there saying, wow, huge difference. Protecting the hardworking men and women of labor was something that I've done my whole life. 43 years with Plumbers Local 200 and 23 years as a union leader. Blood, sweat, and tears, making sure people had a career. In other words, people going down a bad road, people that needed jobs. Construction is the backbone of the economy. But Leader Ort appointed me on, certain boards, obviously, that were my background. Obviously, labor. Let's talk about being the ranker on energy, which is something been very interesting times. Transportation, civil service and pensions, corps, commissions, and authorities. These are all my background. And one thing about our leader, everybody around our conference table, he went with everybody's backgrounds. Obviously, that's the right thing to do, but he made sure everybody is on committees that are going to help out. And just to give everybody a heads up, when you're the ranker, you're not in the majority, but our minority conference has stopped the enormous amount of bad policies that were going ugly. Let's talk about our natural gas. Very important. You talk to people, 75% of New Yorkers want natural gas in their lives. They do. When you tell them that, in other words, it's going to be eliminated by 2030, that you're going to have to go and purchase your boiler, your gas stove, gas dryer, whatever, and you're not going to be able to do that anymore. And you're going to have all the surrounding states are going to be selling, you're going to have plumbing supplies in appliance stores, and that's what we're going to be telling. That's what we're going to be telling the public that they're going to have to do. And one thing that we did, we had a group of great people, and I got my good friend Bob Fonte for the Chambers. I thank you so much for all the work that you do and everybody here. But there we were. We fought back. We did with a lawsuit. Imagine we had to go put a lawsuit forward, a natural gas ban lawsuit with all kinds of plaintiffs. And guess what? The governor goes and she put in all electric buildings in our budget. All electric buildings by January 1st of 2026. Do you know what that was going to do to construction? You already had developers leaving. They were rushing to go submit applications in for buildings like you couldn't even, they were getting swamped before the first of the year. This lawsuit was moving forward, And again, it's against federal law to ban natural gas. Federal law. And what happened was the governor had to suspend it, the all-electric, which was wonderful, which was something very, very important because of our conference did this, made sure that we were protecting all residents of New York State. Not to have 2.5 million of our residents in New York State exited out of New York State to go to Tennessee, the Carolinas, Florida, Texas. 2.5. Do you know Florida right now is at 24 million residents in Florida, and we're in the 18, I'll say 19 million, less than 19 million people, all the people exiting. Our conference is going to make sure we're going to continue to work hard for those numbers to go up for the right reasons, and especially with energy costs. Over 100% higher energy costs have gone up in New York State because of wind, solar, and battery storage, which is nothing but an experiment. That's what happened. And you know what we did? We saved the natural gas because it's a necessity. We all know about the Buffalo storm. If people didn't have natural gas up in Buffalo, they weren't surviving. It's a necessity. We just had a Zoom call with the PSC. And you know what? They knew that the Nessie pipeline is very, very important to come into New York State, to have that pipeline. Because right now, we have hundreds of tanker trucks that are rolling up and down the roadways, 7 pounds of CO2 a mile, wearing out our roadways. We need energy to liquefy it so we can pump into the system. And I had to bring it, our conference brought it to the attention to the governor. She had no idea. And guess what? That will take, this Nessie pipeline will take 60% of those truckers off the roadways. So that's what this conference has done, and we're going to continue. But you know what? I could go on and on and on. But I just want to say, I want to thank everybody for being here, and we are here to hear your concerns. And I got to say, I'm very, very proud that our leader's down here, and I'm here with our colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Matera. And this is a good, this is an excellent, what's that, I'm sorry? He did, yes. I think that's a great segue into our panels. We all get to speak, obviously, because our names are on these little cards. But now we get to hear from you. Because this is a great example of Senator Matera's passion for energy, for representing plumbers and pipe fitters his entire adult life, because that affects them directly, a lot of this policy. So what we're going to do, we have these two fine gentlemen here. If you would, for each of our panels, if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself, tell us who you're with, and we'll give you maybe 3 minutes or so just to kind of give an overview. We'll engage in question and answer. And if you can give specifics as to specific policies, if you have them, because a lot of what we see about the affordability discussion, it's very just global and vague. We need to get specific. And that's why you folks will be extremely helpful to us as far as shaping policy in the future. So, Bob, you want to start?
Sure. My name is Bob Vecchio. I'm the Executive Director for the Nassau-Suffolk School Board Association. My organization represents 116 boards of education across Nassau and Suffolk County. I'm a lifelong Suffolk County resident. I sat on a school board for 18 years, 15 as board president at the William Floyd School District, and unfunded mandates is something I've dealt with for a very, very long time and has truly made it unaffordable. Every time people talk about school taxes, I remind folks just how much school taxes are increased by unfunded mandates both from the state and federal government. And anytime a new mandate comes down, no matter what the mandate may be, if there's a cost associated that's not being funded by those that are putting the mandate in place, I'm automatically against it. A couple of things that I'll talk about here today. First and foremost, I was here to talk about zero-emission busing. Senator Rhodes and I, we spent a very cold Saturday morning, almost 2 years ago, I would presume, where we first started hearing about this new mandate that was coming down, and he was putting forward a resolution to literally pump the brakes on zero-emission busing. And for those that aren't aware, starting in 2027, any new buses that are purchased either by a private bus company or a school district that runs their own buses has to be zero emissions. So what is the unfunded mandate impact of that? Well, a typical diesel bus will cost about $150,000. A zero-emission bus or an electric bus or a battery-operated bus will run you about $450,000. So right away, per unit, that's an increased cost of $300,000. Now, there were some subsidies for that. A lot of the federal subsidies are no longer around. But the subsidies or the grants that were available nowhere can be enough to meet the demand and need. There's 740 school districts across the state of New York. On Long Island, we have 124 school systems, 3 BOCES and 1 special act district. The smallest of the school districts, one of them is very tiny, Kings Park, they run their own buses. In addition to the increased costs going from diesel to zero emissions, I already explained $300,000, but for Kings Park to update their depot where they park their own buses for the electric charging stations, for one district, it's $1 million cost. $1 million in an unfunded mandate that the taxpayers nor the Board of Education had any say in. When this bill was first being presented, a very smart senator said to me, "This is a deadline for a headline." The headlines have faded. The deadlines are fast approaching. Pump the brakes. We need to slam it shut. 2027 is upon us. 2035 will be quickly upon us. Another unfunded mandate that most people aren't even talking about, the vast majority of school districts on Long Island do not run their own transportation. They contract out. School districts are already paying for this mandate without one single zero-emission bus being on the road. Because as contracts come up for renewal, the contractors are building in their projected cost for turnover of fleets. So a school district like William Floyd that runs hundreds of buses with 4 openings for 9,000 students, 100% busing for those students, they are already paying for this mandate without a single zero-emission bus being on the road. We can get into the efficiencies or the lack of efficiencies of zero-emission buses compared to diesel buses. For the senators from the North Country, I sympathize with you because we are not traveling the distances that the North Country is. We are not dealing with the severe cold that the North Country will be dealing with, which reduces efficiencies. We're not dealing with the terrain, mountainous terrains. It's estimated that some of the buses will only be able to do one route and not be able to do afternoon routes or possibly extracurricular and sporting events. Again, this needs to stop today because we're formulating our budgets for 26, 27 now. And again, many school districts are already paying for this huge, huge unfunded mandate. We also have spoken with PSE&G. They have concerns about the infrastructure meeting the demand for the full capacity when it's up and rolling. I mean, think about it. If PSE&G cannot provide the infrastructure necessary for the $1 million investment that one school district has to make to have charging stations, where is it going to come from? In Nassau County, talk about the real estate needed because now where you may be able to park 100 buses tightly together to maximize the real estate space, well, you can't do that because you need space for charging stations. So the real estate infrastructure becomes a real issue, not just in Suffolk County, but particularly in Nassau County, where real estate is at a premium. We don't even have enough real estate for universal pre-kindergarten slots if we wanted. So where is the priority here? Is the priority to go to something that is not efficient? Technology is not where it should be or needs to be for this ultimate goal? But taxpayers are already paying for this. So we need to stop it today. The other concern that we have is we talk about taxes. So I'm going to get away a little bit from energy. Long Island pays on average 70% of school tax, property taxes are for school taxes. That's Long Island. Statewide, it's 54%. We fund more of the share of public education here on Long Island than any other region in the state, barring Westchester County. They're a little bit higher than us. Now, it has to do with wealth. It has to do with a lot of complicated formulas. But we, every time we get an unfunded mandate, we only have one source to go to if the state's not paying for it or the federal government's not paying for it. And that is the local property taxes. I'll give you one example. A regulation that you guys don't even have control over that came out of the state education department called Part 154, which has to do with English language learners, costs my home district $2.5 million a year. That's one school district for an unfunded mandate that wasn't passed in the legislature, but passed in an agency that is in charge of K through 12. Now, the legislature has plenty of unfunded mandates, and I've talked with many of you about many of them and talking about mandate relief, because if you want to lower taxes, lower the cost side of the equation. We're always fighting for funding. And I'll give you a real example. When funding is properly sent to school districts, it provides the best form of tax relief. And I'll use my home school district again. My home school district waited 20 years for the foundation aid formula to be fully funded. And in a 2-year span, they had a huge infusion of foundation aid funding. What did they do when all that money came in? They actually lowered the taxes to the tune of over 15%. You want to provide tax relief? Pay the education bill based on what the state says is constitutionally obligated to be paid. A lot of people don't know that. The governor manipulated the formula last year after fully funding it the year before and shortchanged school districts this past school year. That's not a headline that you read. You hear record investment in education. Except, another thing to keep in mind, for school districts on Long Island, 54% of the school districts on Long Island received a zero increase in foundation aid 2 years ago, got 2% the year after that, and only 2% this past year. So over 3 years, they got 4% in new state aid when inflation increased nearly 12%. So that's why you see a lot of school districts cutting, reducing staff, and still increasing taxes. So affordability, the state has to finally pay the bill for the education costs that they pass along. The federal government's got to do it too, but listen, there's a lot going on down there. We won't even get into that. We could have a whole hearing. So my ask of you is to make sure that you reach across the aisle and have your colleagues pump the brakes, as Senator Rhodes tried to do 2 years ago. Because this one unfunded mandate is a huge, huge unfunded mandate with just the busing costs alone and the infrastructure. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. And I could go on. We could have a separate hearing about unfunded mandates. Senator Wyke and I have spoken at 11 o'clock in the morning. Senator Matera, you know this as well as I do. But again, we're shouldering more of the local cost with our property taxes than the rest of the state. Now, we probably always should, but should it be a gap of 54% compared to 70%? People think we have pockets of poverty on Long Island. The data will show we have pockets of wealth. We have increased E&L students. We are the highest region of E&L students in our population if you take New York City out. No other suburban area has more English language learners than Long Island. And our poverty has increased. I'll give you an example. Free and reduced lunch in the 3-village school district, pretty well-to-do area, was at 6% a couple of years ago. They're up over 13%. We have huge increases in special ed costs, mental health costs, safety and security of our campuses. So we need to get serious about mandate relief, and let's start with the zero-emission busing, and I'll take any questions.
Do we want to do one at a time, or should we do the panel and then? We'll do the panel first. Mrs. Salinas, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. My name is Z. I represent the Empire Center for Public Policy. I'm a somewhat new president and CEO of our organization. We're a small independent think tank, small private independent think tank in Albany. That's where I live. I used to live in Cohoes, which is, many of you might not know, has the second largest waterfall in New York State. I used to be a teacher and I used to be an energy analyst, so just so happens I oversee education and energy at the Empire Center. I'm here to talk about energy. We just published our a new thing which is called a New York Energy Data Bulletin, which I think you'll find very useful. So 3 things about electricity. And I don't want to sound like Captain Obvious, but yes, electricity is expensive in New York. In terms of average residential prices as calculated by the Energy Information Administration, we're like top 6 in the entire country when it comes to electricity for residents. So that's 1. 2, since 1919, residential electricity prices, or these average residential electricity prices in New York has increased by 45%. Now, that is true that energy prices have been rising in the entire country. However, if you look at the period of before 2019, the price difference between US average and New York average was about 3-4 cents. Now we're into 9. The price difference between what average American is paying and the price difference between what an average New Yorker is paying is actually increasing dramatically. So dramatically that I compared the 2 periods basically before 2019 and after 2019. We looked at price changes every month. So before 2019, You'd have a price increase, you'd have a price drop. It was evenly spaced. You'd have basically fluctuating prices. After 2019, in 58 out of 68 months, so basically 80%, 85% of the time, electricity prices have been rising year on year every month. So we're getting higher and higher and higher. Basically, if prior to 2019 we used to have a fluctuation, now we have a straight shot upward. So that is a disturbing tendency. In terms of course, this entire region, the Northeast region, has relatively more expensive electricity prices, but still, if it's 26.65 for August in New York, it's 19 in Pennsylvania, it's 23 in New Jersey, and the question is, how come Pennsylvania can produce energy cheaper? And I think you all know some of the answer for it. Even more so, if we're talking about making New York a manufacturing state again, electricity prices, and this is residential, this is not even large industrial prices. Even residential prices in Florida and Texas are about 15 cents. It's 26 in New York. You cannot make New York a powerhouse of manufacturing if you have a shortage of electricity and if you have expensive electricity. Now, if you think this is bad, well, I think our state energy policy is a train wreck in slow-mo. And this is, let me explain what I mean by this. New York is acting as if it has so much cheap electricity that it has no idea what to do with it, when in fact the exact opposite is the truth. We have a shortage of electricity. We import electricity from other states and countries. Yet, if you look at state energy plan, what they're pushing for is full electrification of many things, including heating, which makes absolutely zero sense. The reason why I'm saying that, and I have a point to this, the reason why I'm saying this, so put it this one way, the one ideal that New York's, that state energy plan is pushing for is this electric heating with heat pumps. 3% of households in New York actually use this method right now, which means for this to become widespread, you need to change entirely how houses are heated, both in terms of energy source and in terms of technology as heat pumps. Everyone is worried about data centers and saying data centers are using up all the electricity. Well, I looked at the numbers, and basically here's my comparison. It's a very wide one, but if all the buildings in New York State were electrified, not just residential but other buildings as well, that would necessitate as much electricity as taking half of all the data centers in the United States and placing them in New York. So you're worried about Micron, or you're worried about a data center here and there. If New York continues the current path, there's going to be even more larger demands of electricity and no generation of electricity. Point number 3, and this is actually not me saying this as an independent system operator, what they're saying is that New York has come out with a fanfare that we're going to make energy from wind and solar. Well, all these new wind and solar, that's less than 5% of electricity production in New York. Most of our energy is made in old plants that use fossil fuels, and because of New York's energy policy, the investors are either scared away, or if they want to build something, they don't get a permit. So in fact, it's already bad, and New York's energy policy is actively making it worse. And my third final point about affordability, and I think it's an excellent topic to tackle, and there are 2 ways to look at affordability. One is saying, okay, something is expensive, let's throw taxpayer money at it. I think that's the wrong way to do it. And something is more expensive, let's make it cheaper. I think that's the right way to do it. And the right way to make energy cheaper in New York, I think it's all of the above energy approach. We need gas, we need nuclear, we need solar, wind, I don't care. Whichever makes sense, let's build it, let's make that energy in New York, let's make electricity cheap. The wrong way to do it, a good example would be the HEAT Act in the last session that was defeated. Among many other things, it had imposed a fund, which would basically means that those of you who earn more would pay the bills of people who earn less. If you were to make more than 60% of above 60% of median household income, you would pay into the fund that would pay energy bills of people who make less than 60% of median household income. That is completely incredibly irresponsible policy. So those type of policies, please be on a lookout for those type of policies. We will too. Throwing taxpayer money or making other people pay your bills, that doesn't solve the problem. building stuff in New York, making energy cheap in New York by building things that make energy, that's a way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the HEAT Act is in front of the governor as we speak. Right, Mario? Yeah, or the 100-foot rule, rather. Yeah. So we're going to, let's open this up to questions a little bit. Let's try and keep it to maybe 5 or 7 minutes so we can give each panel appropriate time. But any Senator Murray?
Yeah, first, I'll put on the Captain Obvious hat too, and I'll say it out loud, frack, baby, frack. I mean, you want to change the economy, that's, I mean, open it up. We've got natural gas abundance with Marcellus Shale, and open it up, you got a whole new economy, and it just makes sense, and it goes to the all above approach. But Bob, when you say hit the brakes, pump the brakes, do you have an estimate? Do you have a time frame you're looking at? How long should we delay this realistically? Or should we just make it voluntary which is the way I prefer. If you think it's efficient, you want to go that way, but rather than mandating it, what is your best approach?
Yeah, I would say, I know there were some changes in the last session that schools can apply for exemptions if they could show that there is a need. Right. But again, there's 740 systems, so now you're creating a huge bureaucracy. I just think system-wide, we just need to stop right now because there's other alternatives, right? And, I've heard about hydro combustion engines, right? So let's explore that a little bit more, and that's clean, that's zero emission, and that's renewable, all these other things. So from a timeline standpoint, I think you definitely have to do away with 2027. I think this coming session, strike 2027 from the books with no change to say, okay, 2027, we'll make it 2030. Let's just stop right now. Because from a budgetary standpoint, again, we operate in 3 budget cycles as a school, right? We look at the current, we're looking at the proposed, and then the year after, right? So from a school budgeting standpoint, 2027 is on us, and I would just do away with that mandate, period, right? And I know it's only for new purchases, so it's not 100%, right? So if you turn over 10% of the fleet, but just do away with that until other avenues could be explored, until industry experts could come in, until you have confidence that the electric infrastructure can handle the demand. You shouldn't set a date until they give you a confidence of when they can meet that demand.
If I could just ask a question following up on that. I know our NICE bus system in Nassau County runs on compressed natural gas.
Yep.
And obviously, we've talked about gas today, that's something that people want to move away from. I disagree with that. Is that an infrastructure that we could put in or suggest as an alternative to running electric
So I would
buses?
Go to the industry experts, right? Suffolk Transportation is one of the larger transportations bus providers here on the island. They've had propane gas buses for over a decade, right? And they're the ones that were exploring hydro. I would say don't mandate anything. Let's just stop it. Let's have some honest conversations about what's feasible, what's affordable, and going back to local control, local decision making. William Floyd has a different purchasing power than Kings Park. So one option for Floyd may not work for Jericho, right? State aid ratios work very differently, right? A high needs district gets a lot of money from the state for transportation, so the local share is very different than, say, Sayville or Bayport Blue Point or some of the other districts in Nassau. So those conversations need to happen on an individual or volunteer basis, which is why I say just do away with the 2027. The negotiation, you could still talk about 2035, but again, not only do you need to pump the brakes, you just need to throw the whole thing out.
Senator White, I guess last one.
Bob,
we can
you
at
and I
this
have
panel.
talked endlessly about unfunded mandates. And so here's my thing. Every time I bring up unfunded mandates, and let's see if we can do away with things that are outdated, they're antiquated, they're duplicative, they're already in place, I get met with pushback. And the pushback is this money, even if it's duplicative or antiquated, is already being spent somewhere. You can't just do away with the mandate. What is your best recommendation on how to minimize the unfunded mandate list?
Well, find out why the pushback's happening, right? Behind every mandate was a great idea and a special interest group that wanted that idea. But you can't keep mandates that were on the books 30 years ago if we're transforming the delivery of our system every day, right? I'll use special ed as an example because that's the hot button issue and that's a very expensive ticket item. Nobody wants to touch special ed mandates, but if you talk to the professionals, those that are delivering boots on the ground, delivering the services in the classroom, they will tell you there are better ways to deliver the service and improve academic performance, but we have to do it this way because this is what the mandate dictates. And it's interesting to note that the federal government has its own set of federal mandates for special education, Individual with Disability and Educations Act, the IDEA, which they underfund, by the way, by over 30%. New York State has about another 250 mandates on top of what the federal government mandates, right? So let's take a look at it and let's get the professionals in the room. I'll use Part 154 as an example. You talk to the teachers. There's a better way to meet the needs of E&L students than what is as prescribed with that one regulation. So have the conversations. Nobody wants to have the conversations. Nobody wants to talk about the expense side of the table. We're always fighting over the income side of the table, right? I did numbers in healthcare accounting for 32 years, so I look at both sides. So we have provided list upon list upon list, and then they go nowhere because there's a group, there's maybe it was a senator's bill that became the mandate, and they own it, or whatever the case may be. But again, talk to the people, boots on the ground, of how to improve the delivery of the services, and show me that it'll improve academic performance. What about pilot mandate relief, right? Let's pilot it in a certain region and make sure it's going to deliver what we're projecting it to. So this way, you're not doing it statewide, but you're giving school districts the ability to try it out regionally, and then you look at the outcomes, and then if it works, then you can spread it out. We're not even willing to do pilot mandate relief, which is something we've been asking about for years too.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you to this panel. I mean, we could have a very, very long discussion on this. Mary, you want to do quick one?
Just
Okay.
quick, I just wanted to say about what this conference has done, and you know this, even with the foundation aid money, $175 million was going to be taken out with the governor's proposal.
Yeah.
$75 million just on Long Island, and you know what this conference did? We fought back and it got restored because of this conference. You know, we all voted no, by the way, for all this EV bus disaster, especially our grid is antiquated here on Long Island. We all know it. They came up with a $280 billion number to go all electric in New York State. That's not even going to take care of the city of New York City. We all know this. And I thank you so much. You're right on target with everything that you said. And not for anything too, yes, we need to retool our existing power plants with carbon capture. That's going to be the most efficient and economical way to move forward. We need to have the Nessie pipeline come in, Caithness 2, a combined cycle plant. That's perfect plant. To go put all our eggs in one basket, and again, it's always the cart before the horse with New York State, where we fought, because this conference fought up in Albany to make sure of this would happen right now with the suspension. It's being suspended only for 2 years. We all know this. The EV buses and all electric. It's amazing. Congestion pricing, we all talk about that, guys. Congestion pricing, guess what? We put it on pause. Election, went past the election, press play. It was amazing how that happened, all right? But not this conference. We're the ones that fought to make sure that this, and again, and I'm very proud. But again, who do we vote for? That's what everybody needs to understand. Make sure you see who you're voting for and see what they're looking with their policies. Did they fight for any of this? You need to look back and see who voted. Who voted for all electric? Not any of us, but we had to go fight with a lawsuit. Get plaintiffs involved with a lawsuit. Imagine that. And that's what's suspended because the governor doesn't know what to do. She got boxed in a corner. Again, she's a very nice lady. I get along with her, but I had to go ambush her. It's so funny. Lito goes, "What are you doing?" After when there was a fundraiser, he goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm waiting for the governor." He goes, "Well," I go, "Yeah, because I can never get a meeting with her. So I have to make sure when she comes out and say, Governor, did you know this? Did you know that all these tanker trucks are on the roadways? So you know what? We care about the environment so much. Where's the environmentalists? 7 pounds of CO2 a mile, guys, going up in our atmosphere." That this conference made sure that was brought to the attention. But again, we need to make sure our infrastructure is put in place first and then transition into that. But let's talk about the 40% of the transmission lines that come from out of the state. And what do they ran on, everybody? Fossil fuel power plants. What do we have, a bubble over New York State? That the carbon's not coming this way? We are not California with the weather to have wind, solar. We, in battery storage, our neighborhoods, we're in dense areas. We do not want them. Go put it in Plum Island. Do something like that smart. Go put them in areas, not in our residential areas. And it's not going to work. It's going to cost trillions of dollars, and you know who's paying for it? All of our ratepayers. We need to make sure that we invest in the right. Thermal energy, very important. Wastewater, big, like Stony Brook, we're working on that. You can reuse wastewater. Do you know how many gallons of condensate, steam condensate, is being dumped out into the Hudson? Okay, just give everybody a heads up. That could be reused and that will keep the cost down on even fossil fuels. Reuse wastewater with thermal energy.
You can see why he's the energy ranker.
Yeah, no, he's very passionate. He's very passionate.
Save-
And I don't think there was a question
And
there.
we need a plan and not a ban.
Not a ban.
Mr. Salinas, I do just have one quick question. to
Really
close it
tight,
out.
please.
You referenced 2019 as, for the basis of your comparison. Can you explain to those that are watching at home and those here in the room, what happened in 2019?
Well, many things happened, but one thing is CLCPA, or Climate Leadership
Thank
Community
you.
Protection Act, which was voted in 2019.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you all. Okay, next panel. Great work, thank you. Next panel, this is the Affordable Housing Panel. Please come on in. Paul, you are?
Small business.
You're small business. Yes, you've been very patient, and you have a village to run. What's that? I'm gonna keep it a little tighter. Yeah, we're trying to keep the whole forum to 2 hours, so we're now almost an hour down. So we're gonna go lean and mean. We have these four fine folks, and folks, after you take your seat and get settled, please make sure you have a microphone in front of you. Yep, and just introduce yourselves. Please let us know who you're with, and maybe if you can keep it to like 3 minutes, because we, as you can see, have some vibrant questions, typically. Yep. Great.
Ready?
Yeah, ready when you are.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Gwen O'Shea with Community Development, Long Island. We are a nonprofit organization that has been serving Nassau and Suffolk. We do a little bit of work in Brooklyn and Queens for close to 60 years now. We consider ourselves all things home. We touch all aspects of home, from rental properties to existing single-family homes. We do a lot of work in not only creating and developing new opportunities in the rental and homeownership space, but also sustaining and maintaining and getting people prepared for that, right? So we do a lot of work around homeownership. We actually do some lending ourselves. We're a community development financial institution, so helping support down payment assistance, helping support the construction of new units across the island, and then helping to really maintain those units once they're built. Long Island has some of the highest percentages and numbers of seniors, many of which are residing in their home, want to stay in their home, but really need a lot of support in terms of making sure that property is healthy and safe. And so we do what we can to make sure, whether it's through weatherization, accessibility rehab, that we're there to support individuals and support communities as well.
Hello, my name is Edna White. I am the president of the Greater Gordon Heights Chamber of Commerce. I also have my own business, Second Chance Incorporated. I have about 20 years as a real estate broker. I had an office in Wyandanch and Coram. I worked mostly with first-time home buyers, investors, and rental properties. I guess I am the one that hears everything that's happening here. I hear it. So as a chamber president, people come in, talk to me about this is what's going on. I may not know all the policies, but I hear the hurts and the pains and try to solve them as much as I possibly can, connecting them to people like you.
Okay, sure. Eric Alexander, Director of Vision Long Island. We're a not-for-profit that's spent 27 years planning locally in neighborhoods to approve housing of all different types, from affordable units to transit-oriented development to mixed-use housing. We've done direct plans in 35 communities, and we've The results of a lot of the plans we've done have yielded 19,000 transit-oriented development units in the last 18 years. There's about 10,000 units going through the planning process right now. We just had a summit that had 1,100 people out, and housing was a top priority. We do have a series of recommendations on how to make housing more affordable. But I'll just say this, one of the number one barrier now to achieving affordability is the pushback that we've had to regional housing policies and the attempted takeover of local zoning. We're seeing more pushback on the ground to all forms of housing. So there's lots of wonderful programs that need more support on a federal and state level and others, but the one thread is the public trust and getting the communities on board to support projects. And that happens when communities themselves plan, as opposed to from folks from the outside plan for them, including a group like ours, by the way.
Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Fife. I'm General Counsel for the Long Island Board of Realtors. We are the not-for-profit trade association that represents approximately 27,000 realtors in Queens County, Nassau County, and Suffolk County. We are responsible for education, advocacy for really that large real estate community here on Long Island. We also operate as the majority owner of One Key MLS, which is the really the database where all the brokers post their listings. So I as staff interact with a lot of our real estate professionals, hear what they're going through, and I'm actually happy to be joined by one of them who is on our executive committee, and he can introduce himself. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Hi, everybody. My name's Kevin Leatherman. I'm the immediate past president for the Long Island Board of Realtors. I'm also a licensed real estate broker, operating my own brokerage and based out of Rockville Center. And thank you to be here. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Lean and mean. Lean and mean. No. Senator Matera, actually, it ended 10 minutes ago. No, I'm kidding. No. Senator Murray, you had a question.
Yeah, just two. I'll do two, and then if you can. So first with Eric, can you clarify when you said the pushback regarding the?
Yeah. So for an 11-year period, there had been more community support than opposition to. There was 136 of 154 hearings for multifamily development had more community support than opposition. Once the approaches to change local zoning from a top down, mostly coming from New York City interests, not really, when that happened, we then saw the change to winning 40% of the hearings, 11 for 24. This year we're 4 for 6. As far as approvals and support, but it's so critical that on the local level there be public support in order to get a project approved, right? So really in the end, no community wants to solve a regional problem on their back. So the effort should be to plan locally with local towns and villages, and of those, look, there's 100 business districts on Long Island, 45 of them have approved at least one project. So it's not like nobody's doing anything. Right. The North Shore and East End isn't doing much, so you could focus on them as areas that they could do some things. But the areas that are doing plans, we really want to see. Now the state has shifted to an incentive program, and we're happy about that. But there's still a lot of anti-development activity that was generated from this whole regional push. And we've seen it from a lot of different places. And we know more housing needs to happen. Let's be very clear on every level. So there's a reason to people think about it regionally, but we really need to implement it and plan it locally. And that's the best way to get this stuff done.
So let the locals do it.
Let the
locals state help,
Help,
but not
provide resources.
Demand, right?
And there's plenty of things the state can do, and plenty of funding that's going to be cut on the federal level. There's a 5-alarm fire on the federal level as far as major subsidy programs. The state, as far as the state goes, we don't get tax credit programs. We're 15% of the population, pay 21% of the taxes. We get like 3% back. We get like one project a year for plans that have been approved on the local level, but we don't get the subsidy piece in. And then there's a whole slew of things that could be done with SECRA, energy, and so on. I won't bore you with that because I don't want to take up too much of the time here. But we could follow up, in paperwork. But there's a whole slew of things that can be done that are supportive.
Right. And then Gwen, real quick, I know you help with especially affordable housing projects and all, but what's the main obstacle you're seeing as far as, is it property taxes that are driving up the cost? What is the biggest obstacle you see to these projects that you want to help?
The biggest challenge right now is inventory, right? Is just there is such a demand. In addition to the programs that I noted, we also run a homeownership center where we help people really get prepared for homeownership so they're in a successful position. They're not out over their skis, and we have a 98% rate of individuals 10 years and after holding onto their homes. I bring that up because we have a few hundred people that come through that program over the past few years that are pre-approved, ready to go, have a mortgage, in a really good position to be able to financially manage that, but there is no inventory. And so part of the challenge, while there certainly is, I think, a really important piece of some of the work that we do, is recognizing the uniquenesses of each community and that there's not a one-size-that-fits-all for each community. And the East End is doing a tremendous amount, and thanks to you all for supporting, quite frankly, the accessory dwelling unit funding, because that has been a game changer. We were just watching a video, shared it with our staff today, about a family in the town of Shelter Island, a gentleman who has 2 children, recently divorced. His parents are, have a home, they raised their family there, but they have financial constraints. They're living on Social Security. They were able to access this program, $125,000, excuse me, of support. And the son talks about how important it is to have, I know you're going to be hearing some comments about childcare later, how important it is to have the best childcare possible, your family, and to be able to be part of a community that has so much value to you. So those dollars, it's not about saying you need 100-unit development everywhere. It's really seeing what makes the most sense, but it's really important that it's affordable. So I think getting the inventory going, having the resources, from the state, and there's a lot that you all are offering that we are so grateful here on the island. Because on average, it's about $600,000 to build a home that is not affordable for most individuals, and so we need that subsidy is critical. The Affordable Housing Opportunity Subsidy, up to $200,000 to help with construction, huge game changer here. But it's also really helping to work with municipalities on providing capacity to address water infrastructure issues. I mean, that is, we know, one of the biggest challenges here on the island, but also supporting municipalities so they can help fast track some of these. There are, we know, intentional pauses and barriers that are put up because certain individuals don't want to see development, whether it be homeownership or rental. But we also know that many of our municipalities are small in nature. You do not have the capacity to really help expedite, even if it's something they're trying to do.
Before I pass it over to Senator Rhodes, just because it's regarding ADUs, that obviously was a big issue when it was mandated. That became a disaster. Right, disaster. But I represent the entire East End, so Shelter Island as well, of course, that both Hamptons, Riverhead Town, Southold Town. And I had a bill that was adopted by 4 of the 5 towns that created a community housing fund, which is a subsidy that is now generating millions of dollars to help with that. For example, when we had hearings in East Hampton, because they said, we have a brain drain, we had a school teacher stood up and said, so I'm one of 2 school teachers in the entire district of East Hampton, that entire town of East Hampton, that lives in East Hampton, because everyone had to commute, because you just can't afford to live there. So the ADUs, they had essentially allowed it in every home. They had a very, very liberal policy and said, this is great, knock yourselves out. They had 0 applications because it cost $350,000 to convert your garage, and just to get a builder on the East End to show up. So there are a lot of dynamics at play, but I think that subsidy, I'm glad to hear that you said that, because that is now available. That was only adopted because they each had to do it by referendum, and all 4 towns that put it on the ballot voted for it.
By the way, I just want to say kudos to you and thank you, because that was a game changer for the East End in terms of taking those resources. And we're working very closely, for example, with the town of Southampton. They're putting it into all different areas, right? So we're doing down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. We're doing technical assistance for developers. We're actually we have a loan program, because as you mentioned, it's on average $300,000 to construct a new accessory dwelling unit. You need a new septic system in many of the communities on the East End. And so we're lending with some of that CHF funds at 0% to help close the gap for homeowners that really want to see it over the finish line.
Right. Southold, where I live, is proposing existing buildings that they'll give you a chunk, $80,000, $90,000 per unit to convert it, because that's, it won't pay for it, but it'll subsidize it significantly. Senator Rhodes, you had a question.
Eric, you had indicated that you have a list of ideas, and since the whole idea of this is to listen to ideas.
Sure.
Can you just run through that list?
I'll be quick, yeah. As I mentioned, a 5-alarm fire in the federal government as far as HUD funding, and this is key for working people. These cuts are devastating. If it's, community development block grants, home programs, emergency shelter grants, a whole slew of homeless programs, these are the lifeblood for working people and, folks that just need the subsidies to keep the existing inventory at stake. So that every form of advocacy that can possibly be done right now is where we have to go. On the ownership front, folks want to see ownership, and we've heard a lot as far as condominiums and the potential to get condominiums. We put a work group together that showed, what some of the barriers are. The barriers are financing with the banks, the delays on the AG's process, and incentives like IDA financing aren't available to condo projects. It's not that municipalities don't want to approve condo projects, they do, but builders need some incentive to make these types of projects happen because they're more complicated, they're more costly, and there's delays in them, and there's just headaches in having a million different leases instead of just one. So we want to see more condos, but we got to break down the barriers on how to do it. I think a great ownership program that would speak to condos and townhouses that could provide some incentives, could jumpstart that type, and even proper designs to get smaller units, even cottage-style housing too, so we can get creative with the design and placemaking that would fit in different neighborhoods. Again, I think Gwen is right. One size doesn't fit all in Long Island neighborhoods because Rockville Center is not Riverhead, and Greenport's not Great Neck, and what have you. So there is a whole slew of opportunities from the design side. On SECRA, the Department of Transportation sometimes is slow. The DEC is sometimes slow. The county health departments is sometimes slow. The fire marshals is sometimes slow as far as delays. We always hear about towns and villages that aren't doing enough to delay projects, but there's other levels of government that slow things down through the SECRA process. And there might be some time frames that you could stick into the SECRA process and some economic analysis that could go into the SECRA process also that would be helpful to various developments. We've heard, just saw the news article about the scaffold law that is, and I know some unions are going to be opposed to that, but the 500% increase, I don't know if that's true, but we've heard it's an increase. I don't know if it's a 500% increase, but any increase in this climate is not good, right? So it just adds to costs of development and construction. So let's get to energy. We're happy to see, LIPA get rates down and so on, and we're happy to see the NESE pipeline move forward as well. But the All Electric Buildings Act, I think, was a barrier, particularly for a lot of multifamily developers who have deep concerns about no natural gas in multifamily buildings, and so primarily, so we need to see that pushed off, as long as possible. Really getting our fair share of sewer dollars because 70% of Suffolk County is unsewered. So if we cannot really properly build any form of multifamily development or even creative mix of, again, townhomes, condos, all the other opportunities. And, Suffolk County is doing a fantastic job pulling all possible dollars together, but we need state and federal support in a unified front. The county's doing that, but we just need to keep the dollars flowing. Mentioned design, community land trust, great initiatives that few and far between. And we're not talking about forced community land trust, we're talking about voluntary community land trust. There's examples in Uniondale, Long Island Housing Partnerships work with them. There's some examples on the East End, and there's a fledgling one in Hempstead, but those are real great opportunities. And Gwen talked about ADUs. I know the housing partnerships also working at Brookhaven and a couple other towns on those programs. Those are just invaluable. And again, anything voluntary and planned locally are the best opportunities.
Great, thanks, Eric. You answered my next question within that answer, so thank you.
Okay.
Senator Matera?
I just want to say thank you all for what you do for our communities. And somebody like Eric, we work very, very close together a lot of years and everything like that. You did answer the question about the all-electric suspension.
Yep.
Was huge, and I just wanted to ask the realtors, I wanted to ask you guys how important that was, that in other words, from all-electric and banning natural gas. So, how was your feeling on all-electric homes?
We agree with Eric on that. We supported, and our State Association of Realtors also supported pushing that off. It's not something that we felt benefited homeowners, benefited, in terms of cost. Inventory is a huge problem. I mean, we have statistics to back it up. I mean, inventory in terms of what's available on market right now is significantly lower than it was in 2019. And obviously there's a lot of variables that you can't control, we can't control. I know Senator Ort mentioned, interest rates and having a low interest rate, which I'm in the same camp. We were just talking outside. I mean, there's no reason that at somebody below 3% in today's market, unless there's some real circumstance that's going to drive a sale, we can't force that. But there are so many other initiatives, and we agree completely with the things that Gwen and Eric mentioned. One or two other things, I think, infrastructure was touched on, but we certainly support more state funding because I think that allows for the creation of more inventory. So many things. Traffic's always the complaint here on Long Island. I mean, on the East End, everywhere. I know where Senator Wyke is with the Oakdale merge. The more that can happen in terms of alleviating that, I think it opens up so many more opportunities for development. I know one other point that we really support, not necessarily related to inventory, but for first-time home buyers, is the creation of a first-time home buyer savings account. There's been proposed legislation on that. It hasn't really taken off, but similar to a 529 plan, where individuals can contribute a certain amount that then get a tax deduction for that. I think that would help, at least in some way, for first-time home buyers, because the costs, especially due to the inventory shortage, just continue to go up. Kevin and I were talking outside that the median sales price in Nassau County right now is $825,000. It's almost up 7% from last year. Suffolk County, $690,000, up 7% over last year. So, affordability, the costs just continue to go up. I know Kevin had...
Patrick, I think it's important to note when you say that average sale price that it requires $250,000 of income to cover that. We know that half of Long Islanders that are working are not making that amount of money, so they're already out of the opportunity to become a home buyer.
That's middle of the road, basically, right? I mean, that means,
right.
there's a lot of homes that are going for more than that.
I know we're time crushed, but I want to- And when you introduced yourself, you had mentioned that you hear from people, you hear the complaints and all. What are you hearing?
Well, in my communities,
Yeah.
I'm hearing that number one is that the taxes are high.
Yeah.
Right? And they don't have enough information to kind of hold on to the house if they ever get in trouble.
Oh, okay.
So we see a lot of, new influx of other people, especially, I'm from Gordon Heights, I'm from the Gordon Heights area. I live in Riverhead, but I see a lot of that. And then when thankfully there are a lot of affordable buildings that are going up. I'm actually live in one in Riverhead. And the issue is that once they get the credits and everything, then they go away and then the buildings dilapidate.
Yeah.
So there's a problem, I think that they need to be taken care of. The communities in general with housing needs to be taken care of. We've had in the Gordon Heights area situations where Department of Social Services would just drop people off in rooming houses.
Yes.
They're not upholding the rental permits for certain people.
Like overcrowding and...
Right,
yeah.
overcrowding, and then our areas suffer.
Right.
And then, of course, we don't have the infrastructure for our business district on 25. We don't have that.
Right.
So we kind of are in a lull, both that area and Bellport. Bellport is coming up a little bit because of their infrastructures by Montauk Highway has come up a lot. But where the housing is inside of all of that, it needs help. We don't see the help coming in to kind of enforce this needs to be done, that needs to be done. Those kinds of things to make things look nice and stay nice.
Right.
Like other neighborhoods.
As far as us helping, I want to go back to the part where you said when they get in trouble, they don't know what to do.
Yeah,
Is that
so-
a case where we could offer more?
Right, exactly.
Guidance,
offer more-
advice, help?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Because our office that we have, like all the resources are in Farmingville. Okay, so that if we know about a service, they usually come to our office. Let's go. We need help with this, so we have to send them there, or they may not know that there's a way to save their home. Right. They don't know that. They don't have that information.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And last question, Senator Rhodes.
Yeah, just a quick question. One of the things that's been floated at a federal level is the concept of a 50-year mortgage. Do you have any thoughts or opinions with respect to that?
I do.
Okay.
Sorry. Well,
Sounds
all right,
like it.
all right,
It sounds
all
like
it. All right, sounds like it.
Yes, yes, all right. That was very quick. Well, I happen to be a finance major at Hofstra. So the issue with my first initial reaction was I thought it was absolutely ludicrous. However, I do think there's only a select group of people that would make sense for. Take, for example, if you just want to acquire the property and you qualify, and let's say one of the spouses wants to not be working for a few years to have some young children, that may make sense as a temporary situation. So if somebody wanted to be out of the work, one of the spouses wanted to be out of the workforce for 5 years, it may make sense to at least acquire the house, and then when one of the non-working spouse goes back to work full-time, then refinance. So it may make sense as a stepping stone as opposed to going into a rental and then having to buy later. So just for a select group of individuals, it may make sense if something's going on in the household income.
Now, to dovetail off of that, the other piece of that was mortgage portability.
Mortgage portability. Well,
So-
well, I just want to clarify that because I've heard certain politicians speak about that. Portability going forward for new mortgages is one subject, but some politicians I've heard speak, and not ones in this room, where they said they want to take the existing mortgages and make them portable. Well, you can't.
No,
The money's
yeah.
already out the door.
Right.
And those legal agreements are already
I'm just
in
talking
place.
about going forward.
I think it would be an interesting concept, but the one quick thing I just wanted to piggyback on here is what I see as a 32-year practitioner in the field dealing with old people. I think we have an educational problem because I would love to see if any consumer is going to get any sort of financial incentive in any way, shape, or form, it has to be tied to education because I can't tell you the conversations I have with individuals and whether I'm sending them to credit repair. Basically, everybody needs a counselor. Now, the counselor could be your financial advisor, could be your accountant, could be a realtor, depending on the skill set, could be a mortgage banker or a broker, whoever it is, but there seems to be a void where the consumers, you have to kind of work with what you have, and somebody needs to holistically look and say, look, where's your credit, where's your income, where are your expenses, how are you living, what is your lifestyle, and what are your goals, and to do counseling and to say, we've got to work with what you have, and what is the best that we can do with what your situation is, and setting your priority instead of doing Uber Eats 5 nights a week and hitting Starbucks between two spouses twice a day. So, and I say that sarcastically, but no, seriously, it's like somebody really needs to have counseling, whether it's for an individual or if you're dealing with a couple, sometimes those two individuals are operating differently. So I really think there needs to be some sort of education. And I'm not an educator, that's not my area, but I can just tell you as the recipient of receiving the incoming, there needs to be a lot of education.
Thank you.
That's one of the things we do, and the great piece about that is then you have the financial institutions that are really looking to provide an appropriate mortgage, not get somebody, underwater, and they get rewarded, whether it's, incentives in terms of interest or actual down payment assistance, closing costs, once they've gone through that home ownership counseling. Because unfortunately, there are a lot of mortgage houses out there right now that are not necessarily looking holistically at the picture and setting the family up to be successful.
Right, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, folks, very much. Thank you for your time. And the amortized interest over 50 years would hammer you, too. Take you forever. Yeah, yeah. Right. So, yeah, exactly. You never have equity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Safe travels getting home.
Thank you. Guys, what we're going to do is we're going to combine the next two panels just so for ease of time. Why don't we do that? So our remaining folks who are speaking, please come make yourselves comfortable. Sit on both sides. Mario, thank you. And Senators Ord and Matera, enjoy the holidays, gentlemen, if I don't see you.
Written testimony from Tammy regarding commercial auto insurance crisis.
Yeah, we've got. Okay, Paul, that's you, my friend.
Just combine everybody.
Yeah, we'll combine everyone.
So they all kind of feed
Yeah, come on up, folks. Make yourselves comfortable.
Just going to go to the ladies' room real quick.
You got it. because small business, it all kind of combines anyway, right? Those issues, they overlap. Hi, good, how are you?
They're required to provide you with all of the contacts to counsel like O'Shea's and all that. No, at closing. No, because they're not in trouble, they just bought it. So if you get in trouble, here's where you go.
Okay. I think I need a gavel. All right, folks, so same plan. If we want, maybe we'll start with Frank over in the corner, and we'll just go around. Everyone, please introduce yourselves. Tell us who you represent. And maybe if you can, just give us a short, one or two liner, maybe 30 seconds of what is of concern, but we'll open it up to questions, and we'll use the rest of our time because these are our last panels, if necessary.
Hi, everyone. Frank Camerano. I'm the president of the Nassau Council of Chambers of Commerce. We're out of Nassau County, okay, so we're the umbrella organization over all 49 chambers in Nassau. We, directly support all the chambers as well as, especially recently, the small businesses. Up until maybe 2-3 years ago, we did that through the chambers, which we still do, but now, thanks to the, funding of Bruce and the county, we're able to go right at the businesses, which is great, okay? And I appreciate you guys having us here.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Raymond Stackhouse Jr., president of Ray's Transportation, small family business. We are a member of the Trucking Association of New York. One thing I'm not here to talk about is the energy bills because we installed solar 10 years ago, and for our facility, it worked out fantastic. We took advantage of the federal and state and agricultural incentives, and so that we kind of got handled, but I am here to talk about the rising cost of insurance for our trucks, and, we'll talk about it in a little bit.
Great.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Bill Zelikar. I am the executive director for Long Island Farm Bureau, which represents the agricultural industry in Long Island and New York City area. I've also been involved on the board for New York Farm Bureau as well as the American Farm Bureau for the entire United States. The one important thing that agriculture is involved with is each and every one of you and everybody out there has to eat. So in one way or another, we touch every single person out there. And we all have to think about agriculture and where your food comes from. Years ago, we decided that it is a national security interest. I think we all need to be concerned, and it's important that we need to keep our agricultural industry strong on Long Island as well as in New York State, and that food coming from our local sources. So, thanks.
Thanks, Bill.
Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Gavarecki. I'm the compliance manager for Hub Truck Rental Corporation. We're a full-service leasing company. We operate around just close to 2,000 trucks in the general downstate area, about 600 lease customers that are long-term leases. Primarily, I'm here to talk about, most recently, the rising cost of insurance and obtaining insurance for our customers, which all are primarily small businesses.
Good afternoon. I'm Marcel Lease. I am the Director of Veteran Services here in Suffolk County. I appreciate the last-minute invite. I'm here today to really discuss a little bit about our veterans that we serve here in Suffolk County and in the state of New York, and some of the issues that we're seeing in the community with regards to what we just spoke about in the last panel is affordable housing. But also in this panel about food insecurity and some of the cultural reasons why veterans don't ask for help and they don't know or do not know what their entitlements are, and they don't know how to receive those services. So that's just a brief summary.
Excellent. Mayor?
Mayor of the Village of Patchogue. In the last 20 years, we've probably built a little under 1,000 residential units, primarily apartments and condos. And my conversation is really about the conversation you had prior to this with the affordable housing piece and how it affects the downtown and creates a downtown. Our downtown was probably vacant by about 70 to 80% in 2004. When I came in, we're about 7 to 10% now. Just things that come and go. But it's the building of housing and how you approach it and how you put it into the community and how you make sure you have the correct amount of parking and all those other pieces that create the downtown and supports the businesses.
Great. Just to comment on that, Mayor, having grown up in Patchogue, when
Yes.
there was Sweezy's and O'Neill's.
Yep.
That was about it.
Yeah.
Patchogue, for those of you who don't know, is the model on how to develop a village. A
really
walking village, probably what, 40 restaurants?
Oh, yeah. Every bit
It's
of it.
it's unbelievable with apartments, and it's just as vibrant a town as you can get, and you did that, my friend.
Well,
So
what we
you
realize-
really are, you really understand that quite well.
Just a quick understanding. What we understood initially when we took in, and having grown up in Patchogue like you grew up in one of my uncle's backyard.
Yeah, right next door.
Gene.
To Gene, yep.
Yep. Is that it's about feet on a street. It's about having people in the downtown. We were primarily, when you grew up and I grew up, it was a retail downtown. Now it's a restaurant downtown. And you have to understand that that's where it goes. And the other piece on the housing that, I was surprised it didn't come up, is when you have to put 20% down on a $600,000 home, you need $120,000 in your pocket. And most of these young professionals, the ones that work in the hospitals and make a decent salary, have enough money to pay the $2,500, $3,000 rent for the apartment, but they can't put together the $120,000 to get into a house.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Bob Fonte. I am the chairman of the Suffolk County Alliance of Chambers. On top of being, I would love to talk a little bit about housing. I'm a housing commissioner for 27 years, so there's always a lot of interesting solutions. We don't call them problems, they're challenges, and I think we found a lot of them. We just came from, Mayor Pontieri just came from, I had a chamber meeting this morning in Patchogue, of course, and Mayor Pontieri came up with something that was very interesting. Tell a story. Tell the story because people will listen. And we have that opportunity here to tell our story. And we thank you for listening. So a couple things that we were talking about in terms of small businesses, there's always some solutions here. We've been trying to work through a solution of legislation in New York State, which is, I'll call it the small business savings accounts. We spoke about it briefly. What is it? It's an IRA for businesses. That's all it is. If it is an individual, many years ago, I was having a banner year in my real estate business, and my accountant said, "Oh, what are you going to do with the money?" I said, "I'm going to save it. I'm going to put it away." I'm going to say, "No, you can't save it corporately. You can take it personally." I said, "No. No, there's no legislation for that." So here I am, 20 years later, still pushing that initiative. It passed the Senate many times. I want to thank you very much for your help on that. It passed the Assembly. It was in the one House bill last year in the Assembly. We love it to see it go through this year. We have presented. What is it? It's a savings account for small businesses. In good times, save your money. In bad times, be able to take it out. And we were able to work with organized labor. We were able to work with the small businesses. And we said we had a fund. I think it's $100 million is what's allowed. It's what's that fund is allowed, so you can put money in. So we said, let's take it a step further. In business, it's not what you make. If you can't control your income, it's what you spend. So if we could spend less, and because we can't control our income, and have it as a rainy day fund for us, let us take that money out. Tax-free. We're investing it tax-free. But if we hit certain parameters and benchmarks, let us take that out as an incentive. And this way, let's say you say, I want the small businesses to hire X, or to buy Y, or to do whatever it is. Incentivize small businesses so that this way we know that we have an opportunity and that public-private partnership will speak volumes. That's one of the areas that we're looking at in small businesses. One of the other things that came up on the housing side was a friend of mine, as we all have kids that maybe going in college or maybe going to college. What do? So they're coming out with crushing debt. And what are they able to do? So we started thinking about this. A bunch of my friends who are in real estate said, well, what could we do? They need a mortgage for a house. Well, very simply. Why don't you take their student loans and the mortgage and do a wrap? Do a wrap on that mortgage. Do a wrap on that. So you need to work with different agencies in your state, in terms of the finance, housing, and so on, and mortgage or finance department, whatever it is. That's a solution. Because they're crushing debt. They're never going to be able to buy. My daughter came out of college with $135,000 in debt. She'll be paying that off like a mortgage, and she will be going forward. So those are some of the things that I'd love to share with you today, and I thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Rojas. I'm the Executive Director of the Child Care Council of Suffolk, and I am still paying off my student loans as well. So we kind of are the backbone of childcare in Suffolk County. We work with the more than 800 licensed and regulated programs to make sure that they're safe, operating at their highest capacity, and then we help families find childcare. So the two biggest issues, and of course we have a lot, the cost of two families, right? Childcare costs anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 per child per year on Long Island. So it's actually more in some cases than going to college. And it's just when families are kind of just starting out. We did have a huge increase in the Child Care Assistance Program over the past few years. Unfortunately, Suffolk County recently ran out of money, as did about 18 other counties. So now intake is closed. No one can access that subsidy, which is huge. And really going to hurt a lot of families over the next few months. The other, so that's definitely an ask, is we have to fund the Child Care Assistance Program to be able to meet the demand. Childcare is also, they're small businesses. So just to echo off of all the other things being said about small businesses, insurance costs are out of control. Making sure that they are able to pay wages to their staff, which the only revenue for childcare is parent fees. Just to be really clear, whether those fees are paid through the subsidy program or private pay, the only way to pay your staff more to give them benefits is to raise the cost of care. So we're in this challenge, and the insurance rates are just out of control. We've had programs closed simply because they can't afford the insurance. I have a lot more to say, but I'm going to pass it along. Happy to be here. Thank you. And thank you, Senator Murray. I know this is not the first time you've brought this issue up, and I appreciate all your support on this.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for, sorry, it's okay. Thank you for convening this session. It's very much appreciated. I represent the Long Island Association. We are a nonpartisan and nonprofit business organization that advocates for Long Island's economic growth and expansion, and for businesses of all sizes and all industry sectors. And we're actually celebrating our 100th anniversary in 2026. So we've been doing that for 100 years now. I just wanted to mention a few broad topics we're going to be looking at in 2026. We are working on our legislative agenda, as I know you are preparing for the legislative session in the new year. One, energy. We advocate for a reliable, affordable grid, a robust grid that includes all types of sources. So we want to continue to cultivate the offshore wind economy, in which Long Island is a national leader, and renewables, but we also want to look at other sources like gas, more traditional sources. We support the Northeast Enhancement, NESE, I forgot, you know what I'm talking about, the acronym. So the Northeast Enhancement Project, the gas pipeline. We also want the legislature to look at the goals of the CLCPA. They are not realistic. We want New York State to reassess that. We also want the state to not pile on regulations for businesses. So some of the legislation we oppose, which I believe your conference did as well, included the Packaging Reduction Act, which didn't pass the legislature, the antitrust bill, which didn't pass. But those are just examples of legislation that create a difficult environment and business climate in New York State. We're already one of the highest cost places to do business in the entire country, and just over-regulating and creating more regulations will not help businesses create jobs. So we're going to continue to look at those pieces of legislation that will pile on mandates and oppose them. And then lastly, again, I know it's right over there, part of your agenda, we oppose any taxes on the business community because we are already a high tax state. So I'm happy to elaborate on this during the discussion, but I just wanted to put those broad topics out there.
Congratulations, 100 years.
Yeah, it's really incredible.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kira O'Brien, and I'm the Government Relations and Advocacy Manager with Long Island Cares, the Harry Chapin Food Bank. We've been operating for about 45 years now, serving Nassau County and Suffolk County residents who are facing food insecurity and hunger. So outside of providing emergency food relief for individuals, we also work to advocate for and address the root causes of hunger. So harping on a lot of the issues that were already discussed today, increased cost of living on Long Island, increased food prices. We're not only seeing that impacting our clients, but also impacting our bank. Higher cost of food pricing means that people get less food. Higher utility bills, SNAP and WIC federal nutrition programs, really safeguarding those programs. Yeah, just to name a few things, but I appreciate you convening this, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Yes, sure.
So if I may, I just wanted to
It's
add
a free-for-all now. Everyone's had their chance. So
Okay.
please, just
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to have us. Recently, you established the real property tax exemption for 100% service-connected veterans. I do want to add to that, and we are grateful for it, but it does. It really does limit the amount of veterans that are going to be able to access this benefit because there's other parameters that are wrapped into the legislation that includes the housing and how it has to be, the infrastructure has to already be there. You're talking about these are veterans that are severely disabled, let's just say, in the fact that they might need wheelchairs and accessible ADA compliant houses, and they don't have that right now. So if they're not 100% or they don't have those housing implementations, they're not going to have the ability to use that particular legislation. So we would like you to reconsider that, because that will open up a larger population of veterans, because what we're seeing here in Suffolk County, we're seeing a high increase of veterans that have 70% service-connected disabilities, but they would not be eligible for that. But when you're talking 70% disabled veteran, you're probably talking about PTSD, you're talking about mobility issues, and we are also looking at the senior population of veterans, because they are the largest, the subpopulation of veterans. It's our Vietnam era, our ages 65 and over. Those are the veterans that we're seeing more of, and they are coming in for those ratings. But again, if they're not 100%, they're not going to be eligible for that bill. So we just want to have that as a consideration. And that goes to the piece I mentioned earlier about food insecurity. Because they don't have the affordable housing, or they're at a fixed income, let's just say, again, here in Suffolk County, they're making a choice between paying their bills, medications, or food. And that's got to stop. So, and I know that this board is going to be continuing to look at that, and we do appreciate the support you do lend to our veterans across the state.
you and I have had this discussion before. Yeah. With like Long Island Cares, that there's almost a level of embarrassment or pride that they don't want to go seek the assistance that they could actually get.
Yes.
So there are a lot of layers that you deal with doing what you do. So thank you for that. Senator Rhodes?
Yeah, Mr. Fonte, if you wouldn't mind, I know you, in your remarks, you spoke about wrapping mortgages with student loan debt, and it's my own ignorance. I'm sure. What do you mean by that, and how would that work conceptually?
I did a lot of conversions back in the 80s in the Coast and Condos. We converted about 5,000 units
in the age. We took a look back in the 90s, right? So the economy was 7 years up, 7 years down. So we started looking at the biggest debt that people have. They have a mortgage, and they have student loans. So I said, what if you combine the two? How do you do that, right? I say, I guess that's the question. So a bunch of my buddies that we own some properties together, I said, how do we find a solution for this? He goes, well, let's see. Yeah, if it's a federal loan, it's going to be very difficult, right? The federal and the state. I said, let's stay within the state mandate here and see what the state can do. So there's state education. There's loans that come out of the state of New York. You could work it through your banking department, just like you establish guidelines for a mortgage. Why not a mortgage and a student loan, right? And then what you do is you wrap one. You have the initial loan here wrapped around the other loan. So you may have the student loan wrapped with a mortgage. Now you have one payment that gets subrogated out. So in other words, when you're making that payment, it's sort of a clearinghouse. Part goes here, part goes there. But
So
you
almost like a consolidation loan?
pretty much, that's a wrap. That's
Okay.
a wrap. Well, it's a wrap, right? So I'm just saying to you, that would be a consolidation loan. I'm saying, so why can't we do it? Well, you're putting different entities of government together, different pockets in the same pants, right? You're taking money out of it, and I said, that's how you could work it. I love, we could put together some real estate professionals as well as students as well, because we have a youth group that comes to us and say, what do you need, what do you want, and when do you need it? That's usually our questions, and this is one of the things that came out of it. So we could give you a little more detail offline on this, because I really think there's something here, and you'll be the first in the state, you'll probably be the first in the country to ever do something like this. And I'm not saying it can be done. That journey of 1,000,000 miles, 1,000,000 steps is now, and we're looking forward to doing that.
Yeah, the one question I would have on that is obviously because you're taking loans, one is a student loan that's unsecured, obviously, which generally means it's at a higher interest rate. If you combine that with a mortgage, wouldn't you be exceeding loan to value at that point? And what problems does that?
So that's a good question. So we actually discussed a little bit, what could you secure? What are you securing it against, right? On a house, it's easy. You're securing against the equity in the house. But when
What happens when you buy a house and there really is no equity at that point?
I don't think banks are doing that anymore, but in the sense of.
But you're back to your 20% down.
Right. Granted, let me just go back a little bit on the student loan. You gave money to a student banking on their education. That was not secured.
Right.
Right? So, I mean, you have a secured loan. There's got to be a dialogue and a conversation to put together what do you need in terms of to secure it. How do you break out that loan and that payment? And does it make sense? It was just an idea that we started with. Hopefully it gets some legs here. And we could really go into a deeper dive. It is going to be tricky, but I believe it can be done.
Sure. One of the concerns that I have on the student loan piece is not necessarily the payments that you're making in the debt, it's the interest that makes it that much more impossible to pay off.
So it's interesting when you have first and second, third loans, and you have a wrap on those, let's say 3 different loans and they're all wrapped by one, they're different rates, but they get paid out the same, right? And they get paid out. So my point is, if you could do it on a wrap mortgage of 2 or 3, why can't you do it on a student loan and a mortgage? It's different, but I think it's possible.
Thank you.
I
want to jump over to these gentlemen on insurance. What do you think is driving those costs? What can you say as industry individuals?
So, real quick about us, we work with Class 1 railroads. We work with the Long Island Railroad. And when you bid projects with railroads, they're 3 to 5 years. So when you have insurance that doubles, in our case, it doubled in 2 years, how do you make up for that? You can't. When fuel goes up, when, you're just it's out of your control. I got some feedback from the Trucking Association of New York. We are 6 out of the past 7 years a first place safety award winner in our class. We have 6 drivers that I'm paying $275,000 a year in insurance. I'm in a 5-year. I've got 2 years left in my contract with Long Island. It's brutal, and from what I understand, it's frivolous lawsuits. 2 weeks ago, my truck was involved, ironically, right here on the LIE. Solid white lines when you first get off the Clearview with a truck. You're not supposed to pass at solid white lines. We have cameras in our trucks. The car drove into the front of our truck. It's on film. We're already in a lawsuit with that guy. He's suing us. So the frivolous lawsuits, I think, is a driving force. The insurance companies are just passing it on to us. What do we do about it? My opinion, the first thing I thought of is the party that sues the insurance company should pay for both parties' attorney's fees if it's a frivolous lawsuit. I think we're okay because we have the camera. That's just my opinion. I don't know, where's this going, and we have six drivers. I couldn't imagine Chris 2,000 units. I'm curious to hear what he has to say.
Millions of dollars, right?
Well, I mean, they're not my drivers. The only drivers we have are our technicians who service the truck. So basically, a full-service lease is generally a 6 to 7 year term. So our customers are married to us. So I'll just use John Doe's widget supply. He's got 1 or 2 trucks. He would be considered a private carrier, delivering his own products to his own customers. Once he starts, he's considered interstate because, let's say, he's in Smithtown and he has to go over to Jersey twice a month. Now he's an interstate carrier. What I've been hearing, and I hear it from since they're kind of married to us, and I'm in the compliance end of it and trying to help them with regulatory issues and things like that, I kind of guide their drivers, and they'll get cameras, driver-facing cameras, dash cam cameras. Their DOT score is fine. And then they get either they're being dropped, some of the big insurance companies, or they're dropping them outright, and they did nothing wrong. It's just the cost of doing. Why this is happening? It's nuclear verdict decisions. It's a whole hodgepodge of a formula that's coming together, and the insurance companies are looking at it where they would write private carrier insurance all the time. And whether it be a CDL or non-CDL operation, they were always doing it. Now they just outright, 100, 200% increases I'm hearing, or just dropping them totally. Now they have to scramble to get another insurance carrier.
At a prohibitive rate.
Exactly. And then what we're also seeing is, like I said, it's kind of a marriage with the customers, 6 to 7 year term. Some customers are asking if they can buy out their truck so they can insure it at a lesser value, so their insurance rates will go down. So it's not to delve too much on it. It's a huge issue, and we've really seen an increase over the past 2 years, where things were starting to come back from COVID, trucking supply, economy was kind of rolling, getting back to normal, and then they're getting hit with insurance. So,
Do you think? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add on the being dropped. So our daycare centers were being dropped left and right because of the fear of lawsuits, specifically around the Adult Survivors Act. So seeing what school districts were going through, they were not covering the daycare centers, and again, they've had to close. We had ours dropped because of a frivolous lawsuit. So I do think there's something about, I don't know what the regulations could be, but there has to be more oversight of these insurance companies just dropping you, and then now you have to close a business and 200 kids are out of their daycare.
That's what comes to mind. As a lawyer, now as a prosecutor for many years, and then I went into private practice. So my pupils dilate when we talk about suing someone. So does Steve and Patricia. No, I'm kidding. I'm only teasing. But I get it. And I feel like the issue is on the insurance side. There's no transparency, and of course they've got claims. They got to pay out certain number of claims. But those years, because there's an ebb and flow to their cycles, they don't ever reduce your premium ever. Right? How often is that? And if you get a better ratings, the only time you can go down, which is also really rare. So I think it's on the underwriting side, where they should have to justify doubling your insurance in a year. What is unanticipated? They have actuaries and they have professionals there. I won't get on my soapbox, but I get you. And I think, is there anything else that you can think about? Because that's what I think, because there are several bills that address this issue and, around the edges, but I almost feel like it's more or less like an open audit where they're almost in a way, they're almost a public service. We need it. You have to have it. It's mandated by law. What do you think?
I just see it on the trucking side of it. We're like a cash cow. And it's basically, they'll just go after the carrier. When I say carrier, it's customer. Every customer is considered a carrier. They have their own DOT, and it's like a cash cow. You have, attorneys, just, all they do is just go after trucks. And
Deep pocket, big insurance policy.
And the insurance industry is reacting. Now, maybe there's some regulatory or some laws that could be passed to limit some of these outrageous nuclear verdicts that are happening, but they're doing it right. They're not doing it, they're screening their drivers, they're getting the latest safety equipment, cameras everywhere, and still, they can't be beat, so.
And they're dropping without cause.
And they're
Go ahead.
dropping.
But is part of it on the state too? Because a few years ago, we had an insurance commissioner. We don't have that now. It was rolled into DFS.
Right.
So Department of Financial Services now covers it, and I feel like their emphasis is more on banks, lending institutions and all, and insurance is just like rubber stamp, okay, sure, no problem, there you go, whatever you want. And there is no accountability, there is no oversight. It's just, I'm wondering if you're seeing the same thing, because you said in a 2-year period, but have you seen it steadily been going since, I guess it was about 8-10 years ago is when that happened? Is that when you started seeing it? Or?
We've been seeing it gradually, but we're at the breaking point.
Yeah.
Where we have customers that either they're turning in their trucks, or they'll jump the border and go to Jersey. It's a little bit cheaper. Now, Jersey's not a lot cheaper, but it's still, that business, they're being able to survive, so, it makes a world of difference. Downstate, we're primarily downstate, Long Island, and the 5 boroughs in Newark, New Jersey, but that's where they're going. On Newark, New Jersey, when we first opened that up about 8-10 years ago, we were worried about getting enough business out there. Now that it's overflowing, especially a lot of our customers that are in the 5 boroughs, they're jumping the border. And it's primarily, insurance is a big factor. But anybody else want to say it?
I find the same thing. Like I said earlier, we have to bid these projects, and you have people, I have to compete against a bunch of people from Pennsylvania. And I even met with the DEP over there. We have to deal with the DEC in New York. We also have a transfer station. We recycle the products that we get from the railroads that we ship out by rail. CSX comes right into our yard. And when we did have the meeting with my environmental engineer, they're like a reactive organization instead of proactive. New York DEC, they do what they do. It's needed, but when they jump over that line of saving insurance and saving regulations, it's killing us in New York. That's what it comes down to. Again, thank you guys for having this meeting.
We looked at the testimony that was offered from Trucking Association of New York. They're indicating that some of the reforms that have been done in other states are helping. And I do believe that the frivolous lawsuits are absolutely what drives it up. And as an attorney, it always bothers me that unfortunately there are attorneys that take those frivolous lawsuits because that doesn't, if you couldn't find a lawyer to take the case, then it wouldn't proceed to litigation, and maybe you'd have a cut down. However, I do think that Senator Murray, though, made a very valid point that we don't have a commissioner of insurance that is truly monitoring what's going on. And I think that it would be worth it for us to look and see what other states are doing it, what other restrictions are in other states that might help us get a handle on it here in New York.
The Trucking Association of New York, they outlined it perfectly, what's working and what's not. So that's a great guideline to go by for reference.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah, there is, in the, I don't know, who go.
I was going to say, I was just going to, because we're winding down, I was
wrapping
going
up.
to change topics just for a moment, but if you have another comment, please feel free.
I was going to say, there is interesting, and I know you know Senator Palumbo, in the federal system, the loser pays the winner's costs, for the most part, which is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
And will certainly act as a disincentive to the frivolous litigation. I know one of the things that was mentioned here was no fault. I think part of the issue is the idea behind no fault was that regardless of someone's fault for an accident, that they're able to access through their own insurance policy, they're able to access medical coverage so that they can get treatment that they need. If it's a soft tissue injury, before you can actually pursue litigation, you need to establish one of the criteria that it's actually a significant injury. There's a bunch of criteria in doing that. I think one of the issues, looking at it from a practitioner's standpoint, is that you will take a case not knowing whether the injury meets the no-fault threshold, because some of those criteria are you have to be limited from doing substantially all of your normal activities of daily living for 90 out of the first 180 days following an accident. So you're not going to know until day 180, after you've already filed a claim, whether or not they're going to meet that criteria. The problem runs into if they don't meet that criteria, you're putting the case in a suit anyway. That's what you really need to stop. So I don't think it's the concept of no fault necessarily that's a bad idea. I think you need to disincentivize bad actors who are moving ahead with suits even though they have no realistic ability to actually prevail.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Murray.
I wanted to switch gears real quick onto the SNAP and something, and I'm just going to ask that you help me in pushing and opening the governor's eyes to speed things up a bit in regards to changing with the EBT cards to chip technology. We lost roughly $40 million in the last 2 years from stolen SNAP benefits because they're still using the magnetic strips on the back. The thieves are coming in, putting skimmers, and they can do it in seconds. It's done. You skim it, and by the time you're out the store, you've lost every penny you had in your account because they've got the money. Changing to the chip technology, which, by the way, is already in place. The DOL is already using it in New York State. 4 other states are starting to implement it. If we can just turn up the heat a little and say, Governor, if you want to help, get going. Let's get this thing going because we've got the technology, we've got the ability, the money's there. The feds will pick up half the cost. Just fix the problem. So that would help a lot.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, Senator Murray. Yeah, SNAP skimming is horrific.
Yeah.
It's devastating for families. They're already advocating on a small budget, and with that monthly allowance gone, that's devastating for them. That's food for their entire family. So absolutely, we are pushing for that.
Anything we can do to help to work.
Thank you.
Push that would be great.
Great.
And if I could just add one comment on that also. Solving that problem would really help our farm community because a lot of the local farm community has so many problems now by accepting SNAP and benefits like that they don't want to even utilize it to make the food available to the community.
Right.
So that would be.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And I think we're over time a little bit, and we only have the building, I think, until 2:30, but that's okay. They can't throw us all out. We're going to be real quick. Just one quick comment. Mayor Panieri, when we talk about the infrastructure in the building of Patchogue and what you've done, can you kind of give us a little bit of that formula? Like, what did you evaluate as far as, you said it went from retail to really more of restaurants and residential. And can you just kind of help us, because that might kind of wrap up all these issues, which are part of our affordability umbrella.
We're very fortunate in the village. I always look back at the mayors we had before, when Bob Waldauer was there, and the Electreckers were there. They made some decisions that I live on now. In 1986, I became a trustee. The first vote I took was to expand the sewer plant. We have our own sewer plant in the village. It's at 500,000 gallons when I came in, and Norman Electric took it from 250 to 500. We took it from 500 to 800, and now we're looking for the funding to go further. I'd like to get to 1 million too, because then we can expand the sewer plant outside the village. Right now, we go into East Patchogue, and it's created the ability for East Patchogue to build the housing necessary to support their downtown. East Patchogue, Main Street in Patchogue, as a municipality, ends at Bay Avenue. But you go farther east, that whole section. So what I knew early on when I came into office, just one other real quick comment. This discussion doesn't happen very often, and I wish it would happen more often.
We could be days on these issues. There's so many, seriously, so many people have so much to offer.
Yeah, I just think
continue
that
to enhance this.
If it was done, I've been doing this for 20 odd years, unfortunately, and this is only the second time I've ever really sat in on one of these, but it really is interesting to hear what the problems are because they're all intertwined with each other. The housing one was very much involved in downtown revitalization. we've built 1,000, we'll have about 1,000 with the next two projects that walkable to downtown. And that's what made Patchogue grow, was putting people, and I always used to call it feet on the street. I grew up in Patchogue. The senator grew up in Patchogue. And we knew it as a community that you walked through, you walked downtown, you went to the theaters, you did, then it collapsed. I knew when I took the job, the first thing we needed to do. And not just to put housing in. The first project we did was Copper Beach, which was 50% affordable. That affordable component is tremendously important. Art space. Now we needed we had the theater on Main Street. Art space is out of Minneapolis. It has 45 rentals, 100% affordable in the buildings. So you begin to add these affordable components to these larger developments. New Village is 290 units, 30% affordable. Those affordable components take care of putting some people back in their homes. I said earlier, there's a lot of professionals, young professionals, that make a decent salary. But you got to save 20% to get into that $600,000, $700,000 home. The average at Patchogue is it. And you go to the North Shore, that average is $800,000, $900,000. So 20% of $800,000 is $160,000. I haven't got $160,000 in the bank, and I've been working my whole life. So I can imagine my daughter and her husband, they just got married, looking for a home. They're staying within the village. And it is tremendously important, if you want to revitalize the downtowns, is to build the housing necessary. And that's where the support of the state comes in. Because if they can support on the affordable side, with 30 or 40% of these developments are affordable. And affordable means just taking off $400 or $500, $300 off the rent of the $2,500 or the $3,000. If you can give them a break at $300 or $400 a month, you got them. But you also got people then that have a little additional money in their pocket. Will take that elevator down. I was talking to a gentleman who he and his wife moved from Dix Hills to Patchogue. And I said, why'd you end up in Patchogue? They were in New Village. And they said, well, we sold the house. And they said, what we love about it is we're an elevator ride to dinner. We have parking we have one car instead of two cars. The Copper Beach, about 5% to 10% of the people there walk around the corner to the train because it's right there. So I think that development of your downtown is going to be driven by that. And the other piece of it is, and we talked somewhat about it this morning at Bob's event, it's how do you take all those pieces of the village? We just put in for a grant, for the New York Forwards grant. And when you take a look at how it was put together, the Business Improvement District had a piece of it. The Chamber of Commerce had a piece of it. The Patchogue Arts Council designed it and developed it. The Village of Patchogue, obviously it goes through us, so we had a big piece of it. But it's the collaboration of those things. The Chamber of Commerce becomes a huge piece of it. Because if you get the Chamber to support you, and you get those chambers, it becomes part of it. When I became mayor, everybody was fighting with everybody. I was an assistant principal at Bellport High School. The thing I learned how to do was to break up fights in the hallway and get the stupid kids together in the same room and come up with an answer. So we took that kind of an approach. You have to work in a municipality, in a downtown, as a group, not just the BID thinking they're more important than the Chamber, and the Chamber more important than the Patchogue Arts Council. You got to get away from all that crap. Anybody more valuable? If I was still fighting with these two people, I wouldn't be here. And it just became so. It is about that. It is about putting the housing and putting together and getting the support. And Dean and Alexis, when she was a senator, were always supportive. Pick up the phone, make the call. I haven't called you yet, but.
It's coming now, right?
Yeah, right.
Right. No, but everyone rowing in the same direction. That's
Yeah,
great.
really, but you'll always be on the list.
Thank you,
But
Mayor.
thank you. But
Thank you.
Like I said, it
For
is,
the record, I'm a very proud village of Patchogue.
I know, resident.
Yes, I knew it, I knew it. Senator Rhodes, I think I had one quick question, and then we're going to wrap it up.
For Robert and really for Frank as well. You know, I know you had mentioned small business savings accounts. Conceptually, how would that work? Because a traditional, you know, IRA savings account, you're putting money in tax-free, but when you draw, you pay taxes on it.
It's a lockbox, right? Like everything else, money would go in, instead of going into the state coffers for taxes, a portion of that would go into a lockbox that the state controls in the sense of, you could tell us when we could take it out. You become that custodian of the funding. And then you say, at a certain point, you were able to take it out on an economic downturn. When we started this savings account initiative, there was no Superstorm Sandy. There was no COVID. Imagine the money that we could have saved as small business. Less money we would have needed from government. Don't get me wrong, but that's there's a chain of custody, and there's a lockbox that you could work, and then you would give us when in a downturn of an economy, you say, okay, it's a downturn. You guys could take some money out tax free. I'll send you the bill if.
Follow up under that concept, then it would be the state that's actually holding on to the money.
It's
I don't know if you want that.
It's within the bill. Believe it or not, it's in the bill, and I don't recall the exact custodian of it. But the state would say that. I know when I used to say it's budget neutral. It wasn't budget neutral when they said, well, the money's not coming to the state. So the bottom line is we were able to put it away, and you gave us the ability, meaning the state, on the economic downturn, to take that money out on an incremental basis. Tell us the metrics. Tell us what you want. Tell us what we need to meet, but we need to save the money in the good times so we can take it out in the bad times.
Well, I just want to say thank you on behalf of all the senators. Thank you for participating. Just to close things out, I thought it would be helpful to cite a few statistics that New York ranks in that are not necessarily things we want to be at the leader of, but of the total tax burden of income, property, and sales tax, we're second highest in the nation. The individual tax burden, we are the highest in the nation. Property tax burden, the fourth highest in the nation. Number of state regulations, second in the nation. Residential electricity rate, eighth, and the commercial electricity rate, we're eighth in the nation. The median home price, $586,400, seventh in the nation. The average home value, $509,000. The average cost to build a new 2,100 square foot home, we're the sixth highest in the nation at $177 per square foot. Fifth highest in the health insurance premiums, third highest in auto insurance, and for child care for infant and toddler, we're ninth and the 14th highest in the nation. So those, as I said, are things we don't want to be highly ranked, but we are. And it's very pressing on all of us to do better legislatively to provide the subsidies and the incentives to get us out of these numbers. But I want to thank all of you for spending your time here with us to share your thoughts. I can speak for everyone here. Our doors are always open. And if there are things that you think we can do better, please reach out to us. But thank you all for participating. And happy holidays to everybody. Take care. Thank you.
If you have any further in-depth, like those letters that you folks sent, the trucking letters from Trucking New York, please send them to any of our offices, all of our offices. Don't be shy, because that information is gold to help us move things in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
And everybody for putting this together.
That's right. And the staff, Nicole, Tom and Mark and everyone, thank you so much for everything. You guys were great.
All right.